Hello and welcome to Rage Quit. My name is Jay and today I'm going to be asking the question whether or not 3D printing will destroy wargaming as we know it. Sorry, I'm being obviously over melodramatic there. Yes, but that is going to be the subject of today's video, and I do think 3D printing is going to be a contentious issue going forward. Do I think it's going to destroy wargaming? No, I think it will just change wargaming possibly in a way that I and maybe you right now might not comprehend. I don't think many people know exactly the direction things are going to go, but I just want to talk about this and probably more because I inevitably ramble. If though at the end of this video you're interested in this video, you like this video, press like. If you're interested in this video, you've already clicked it. It's too late now, you're already here. I guess you could leave. Please don't leave. Please stay. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you're interested in this stuff, do subscribe. It really does help. So what am I talking about? Right? 3D printing, if you don't know, you can literally now buy there's generally two different kinds of printers, like an FDM, which is like the filament printers, and you now have resin printers. And the resin printers generally produce some really spectacularly high quality detail miniatures of this size. Like, they are super good. I wouldn't say it's GW standard quality plastic yet, but inevitably 3D printing is coming down in price and the quality is getting better. And FDM printers with a resin are generally good for like terrain building or tanks, and we'll get onto that very specifically in a moment. And I personally have just been thinking about this lately. I think it's inevitable that the proliferation of 3D printers, or how common they occur in normal society, will inevitably increase. It's like when you had Netflix first started. I think a lot of people could see, hey, watching videos at home and like online streaming them is a good idea. I don't necessarily want to have to go to Blockbuster all the time. That was one of those like, well, duh kind of moments. Online shopping was a kind of like, yep, that's going to be popular. And I think 3D printing, whilst it might not hit those like heavy heights, I don't necessarily think everybody in the universe will have a 3D printer. But I do think they are going to be much more common. They already are becoming more and more common. The uptake on them, I would imagine, is very high. I'm not going to show a graph or anything like that. You're just going to have to believe me. I haven't really looked this up. But yes, I think the common and how often they occur and the quality of them are all going to improve. And why this might be a problem, a lot of people aren't really so bothered about super high quality, like the best quality miniatures they can get. Some people are just happy with decent quality miniatures at like a decent price. And these are already happening. You've got companies on Kickstarter doing like STL files because they know people have got printers. And you've got companies who are printing them and selling just the 3D printed version of them. Now the manufacturer, like 3D printing, still has a couple of issues. Like if you do the resin one, it's a bit smelly. If you do it, it can be a bit slow, especially for like terrain and that kind of stuff. It can take a while to print them. Whereas you go to a shop, but then again, sometimes the miniature is already formed because you've just printed it whole. So there's pros and cons. I'm not saying there's not. But if in a world where I already have a 3D printer, but it's not good enough for me to print like GW quality miniatures. If in a world though where I bought like an FDM printer for like 400 quid, yeah, it's expensive, but then I could just print out armies for games that I was going to use and I never really needed to buy anything else, then that 400 quid quickly becomes like, actually, that's pretty good. And then the question is, would I then go and buy a Games Workshop army, considering I never actually play in a Games Workshop store, and I could probably use them in the tournaments I was going to? Would I rather than just print my miniatures or buy Games Workshop? I'm going to print them, right? I think, inevitably. But that then leads to questions to what happens to the companies who make most of their money off making models? I'm presuming Games Workshop make a lot of money making models, as well as the books and stuff like that. Now, the books, yes, rules, that's going to be the next step, surely. But we've already seen games like Gasland do books without rules. Books with rules that don't have miniatures, and they've done reasonably well. Frostgrave, I think, is another. For me, rules are going to become free though. Like, games are sometimes just provide their rules, and then you have this weird mixture. If we've got free rules and we can get our miniatures from not the manufacturer, what happens to the manufacturers of the miniatures? Now, there's a FFG do an okay job here. For Star Wars Legion particularly, they just give you the rules for free, but they say like like, if you go to like one of our organized play tournaments, so under the umbrella of an FFG tournament, even though it's not an FFG store, you have to use X percentage of miniatures. It has to mostly be a FFG product based army. And yeah, fine. I think that's probably in the short term how it's going to have to be. Games Workshop do have the problem in that if you go to tournaments that aren't at Games Workshop stores, they're not even necessarily involved in that. Their organised play has been a little bit slow on the uptake. So they have that problem. And why is this even an issue, right? So let's go to this article here. I realise I've been rambling a little bit more than usual, but I'm not particularly happy with this article, but I'm not unhappy with it either. So it happened in the 1st of July. It's on Spiky Bits. I know some people don't like that, but here we are. 40k feels bad. 3D printed army wins a tournament, right? And essentially what it was, this guy 3D printed his army, 3 tanks or what have you, and he won a tournament. The unpainted, which I think adds a lot to the dislike of this particular army, because essentially he can now just print off his maybe cheesy list or whatever. I don't know this gentleman in particular, but maybe he can, if he wanted, print off his 5 Dreadnought list or whatever the hell it ends up being, and try and smash people at tournaments. Now, the fact that it didn't have a painting requirement left people to be like, hey, it didn't have a painting requirement, and it's in neon green. It's like, well, it didn't have a painting requirement. That's not really, the colour has nothing to do with it. It's whether or not it's 3D printed or not. And then you have the guys from Frontline Gaming. One of them said it's with the 3D printing models are banned from specific events, but not all events. And he said it's hurting the hobby to do so. So, like, you don't have to take my word. It will hurt the hub from somebody who's in the industry. Reese Robbins from Frontline Gaming. He said it's basically, I'm paraphrasing, that 3D printing models is going to hurt the hobby, right? And it's hard, as I explained, it's hard to see how it wouldn't do. If you can just 3D print your stuff, like if these tanks were like 80 quid a pop or something, and this guy's 3D printing them with a $200 printer or whatever, £200 printer, he might already make his money back and be fine. And it hurts Games Workshop if you don't buy Games Workshop product, for sure. And you might think, I don't like Games Workshop, that's fine. But imagine that trickles down to every other game company that you actually might like. So what I'm trying to say is, there's inevitably a seismic change coming to the industry, and I don't think we know where it's going to settle. I think in the short term, companies like FFG, Games Workshop, those kind of people, they're just going to have their rules mostly available and say, hey, look, you've got to use mostly our products, and most people are going to respect that. But once it becomes almost impossible or very difficult to distinguish between the two, because you can just easily obtain files that look very similar to it, and they can't tell if it's a conversion or what have you, the waters are just going to become increasingly murkier and murkier. And I think as a community, yes, we all want to support the people who make the who make the miniatures. But if there becomes a cheaper option in an expensive hobby, maybe you have a wife and kids and stuff like that. Like you might think, oh, actually, I'm not going to spend my money there. I'm going to buy this printer that maybe I can print stuff at home. Maybe I can print stuff for my gaming. Maybe I can print stuff for a different hobby as well. Whatever. Like, if you can cut costs, inevitably you sort of want to cut costs. Like, that's why people use Amazon instead of going to their local store. I use Amazon. Really, I should go into town and buy stuff from a local British manufacturer or something. Instead, I just order it off Amazon Prime and it comes like the same evening sometimes. And I feel bad about that, but sometimes it's just ease of use, isn't it? And I do worry that it's all right for us to say morally we'll try and support the companies that are producing these miniatures and stuff like that, but ultimately people generally take the path of the one that's easiest for them to do, easiest and cheapest for them to do. And whilst we're not there with 3D printing right now, I think inevitably we're going to get there, I think. And what does that do for Wargaming? As I said, we have that short-term appeasement of, you've got to use our miniatures, guys, if you're playing our game. But what if a game like Gaslands suddenly became super popular, became the most popular game? We then have just a book, and then miniatures that people are either, you buy Hot Wheels, which aren't even connected to Gaslands already, or you buy a 3D printer and print them. And then what happens if a game that just has free rules becomes super popular? Well, then it's anybody's game. What happens then? I honestly don't know. And could that happen? Yes. Like, you could, there's open source versions of rules anyway, like the Grim Dank universe or whatever it's called, like an open source version of 40k, basically. Those already exist. If one of these becomes super popular and the miniatures you can print or just gets cheaper from friends or whoever has a 3D printer or eBay or what have you, super cheap, what happens? I don't know. And I think that's why I said it's the death of wargaming. No, it's obviously not the death of wargaming, but I don't think this problem particularly happens in, say, D&D, because D&D, people like that universe. It's already established, and the miniatures are sort of optional anyway. The terrain's optional anyway. It's all sort of like a mind game, and people just want to be playing off the same sheet. It's already occurred that there's free versions of D&D style rules like RPGs, and they're not necessarily the most popular anyway, are they? So will that apply to wargaming? Yeah, maybe not. It's really hard to say. I would not like to be Games Workshop or a manufacturer of miniatures right now looking to 10 years from now, because I don't know what will happen. I do know that 3D printing will become easier, cheaper, and better quality. And then what? Well, I said, I don't know. Does anybody know? If anybody tells you that they know what's going to happen, I would instantly call them a liar. I think we can all have hopes and dreams about what's going to happen. I'm not even sure what I hope for, because I really like the idea of being able to like customize miniatures to my own style. Are Games Workshop going to start selling 3D printed files? That would be, maybe that's the future. Maybe that is the future. I know people have thrown that out before, but maybe Games Workshop say, hey, look, we're going to produce these stuff. You can do them the old school way, or you can use these 3D printed files. And if you use these files exactly or slightly altered, then you're okay at a GW store. We still make money off them. In fact, we probably make more money off them because like it doesn't cost anything to sell a file really, apart from a bit of server data or what have you. Whereas we got to manufacture the other ones. Maybe that's the thing. If anything, I think that duality of Games Workshop will sell 3D models and actual files and say you can use them both. But it's the companies lower who have like risk and opportunity. They have the risk that if they don't get on this 3D printing bandwagon in the 5, 10 years, 15 years time or whatever, whenever it occurs, if they're not there, they might die off. And yet they have the opportunity to really like take advantage of this changing times. And I say changing times, as I mentioned about that tournament, it's not going to happen. It's happening. It's already happening right now. That article of somebody printing a 3D tournament, a 3D army, and then winning a tournament is a perfect example of what is to come. It's just going to be in different ways. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I was a little bit more rambly than usual here. I guess I should have made some notes. Too late now. I've recorded it. But I think wargaming as a whole is not like, is it at risk? It is technically at risk, but uncertain times are always risky. Do I think it's the death? No, what's going to happen, I think, will just be a revolution that people try to temper and lower, and we'll end up with a nice balance. But I just don't know who's going to be the top of that chain or who's going to fail. It's that simple. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do like and subscribe. Have a most beautiful day. Goodbye.